And increasingly, many of our young people are of an understanding of the games that people play in the political arena. Indeed, many of our youths today feel that it is pathetic that they should have been allowed to become genuinely educated and be treated this way by politicians, as though you learned nothing, and that ultimately you have to listen. And if you follow the trend, you know, it's like father, like son. And you feel sorry for the others in the crowd, the other parliamentarians who find themselves challenged to make good use of their time, particularly when it comes to speaking about the work that they have been able to do in their respective constituencies. So that those listening will recognize that some people are able to transform their constituencies while others are left to languish. And it is amazing how many of them got up in the last week to tell you about the road repair program, because they know that the majority of the listeners do not remember that on the campaign trail in 2001, they were told that we will change all of that. And after the election victory, they were promised that there will be units set up by the Ministry of Communications and Works, or now Transport and Works, in different parts of the country to ensure the sustainability of a viable road repair program, road maintenance program, so that they will not have to wait long periods of time before they address problems that emerge with regard to the roads. That was 19 years ago. You still don't have that. Yet one by one they got up and were trying to tell their electorate, who they hope were listening, all the repairs in almost all of the roads in almost all of St. Vincent and the Grenadines that will take place between now and elections. So, for the last 19 years, some of those roads have not received attention. But they will now, because the party is seeking an unprecedented 5th term in office. And you dare to suggest that there is an education revolution. If there was an education revolution, the young people would laugh in your faces, as some of them are already doing, because they can't take you seriously. They ought not to take you seriously. So what was the parenthetical diversion into religiosity during the Prime Minister's budget address? What was that about? Who was these religious pronunciations intended for? Who were they intended for? They were intended for those who still believe that if a politician presents him or herself as possessive of the Christian faith, being able to quote scripture, to talk about religious matters in a manner pleasing to them, that they are more likely to vote for that individual. That's why we had that religious parenthesis. You see, Just Another Look again appeals to Vincentians to pick sense out of nonsense by applying one's critical thinking skills. You see, for politicians like Pierre Campbell and Ralph Gonsalves, there may well be merit in a fulsome understanding of the role of religion in the Caribbean and particularly Vincentian political cultures. The more a political leader appears to be religiously committed, the more he or she is likely to garner votes at the polls from those who are Christian. Just Another Look has repeatedly asked whether Gonsalves is trying to convince the Vincentian Christian community that he has experienced the Saul to Paul type of religious conversion. Is he still trying to convince us that he's not the Saul that people thought he once was? He is now Paul, a converted Christian. Is that where we are at still at this stage of his political career? Is that where we are? Listeners are free to come to their own conclusion. It is nonetheless important to reflect on the several decades that Gonsalves has been involved in politics. To him, these were years of political activism. That's by his own definition. And so he attempted to tell the whole of Parliament how many years, how many decades he'd been in, quote-unquote, the trenches. The political trenches. To him, these were years of political activism. It is nonetheless, to some of those who dare to take the time to analyze his politics, however, many of them have been years of political maneuvering. Many of them have been years of political maneuvering, seeking out the best opportunities to make the right move. To Just Another Look, these may well have been years of unbridled political opportunism. And history will reveal it. There is a distinction between political opportunism and genuine political commitment. Political activism can be undertaken by just about anyone. Rennie Gross may consider his life a life of political activism. What does he have to show for it? He may well, like others who were involved in the odd thing, have had the view that that was an amazing opportunity to create an institution that would play a genuine role in the future of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The concept of an organization in defense of democracy was not itself a bad one. But if you attempt to manipulate a concept, if others come on board with the intention of facilitating an organization that they believe would afford them a conduit to leadership, a conduit to political power, rather than the oversight that was originally intended by those who created the concept, then all you have done is continue to fool the people. So are there any members of the Organization in Defense of Democracy who are today actively involved in defending democracy in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? You know where you're more likely to find them? Defending the status quo of the ruling Unity Labour Party. That was not their original intention. It was not what they enunciated in public when they call upon the public to support them. They actually thought that they were being taken seriously. That's why they were able to say, and we are here to stay. This is not an organization that will go away after these street demonstrations of April, May 2000. We are here to stay. They didn't last longer than Miss Janie Fire. Ask Renwick Rose how he got to Grenada. On whose plane he got to go to Grenada when they were trying to sort out the problems in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Ask him whose plane he was on. And when they came back from Grenada and they announced that the elections will take place no later than the end of March in the following year, what role did Renwick and other members of the Odd Thing have in that since then? What role? Renwick, who was in WINFA, who was the leading voice and spokesperson for Windward Island farmers, didn't he have to sit down at home and hear the announcement that not him, but Cecil Ryan was put across by the Banana Growers Association? These are the games that are played politically. So one has to have an understanding of the nature of the politics of Ralph Gonsalves. And many of those who thought that the street protests of 2000 was ushering in a new dispensation of which they were going to be an integral part, have found themselves put in their places. They are not key decision makers. And many of them have satisfied themselves with the droppings from the master's table, because it gives them at least an opportunity to be in the public domain and to be able to eke out a living. Their reliance on the system as crafted and massaged and administered by the ruling ULP administration is incredible. That's their only way out. That's their only option. So those ruminants of the leftovers, have found themselves having to suck up to the Unity Labour Party in order to survive. In order to survive. If the organizations that some of them once controlled no longer have the power that they once did. Access to employment opportunities, access to decision making of any sort is determined no longer by them. What have they become? Not even shadows of themselves. This is the reason, friends, that Just Another Look consistently asks whether or not Gonzalez, at any time in his political career, we still ask that question. Did you, at any time in your political career, approach the St. Vincent Labour Party and approach the New Democratic Party to work with either of them, even to the point of accessing a senatorial position? We ask you that question again today. We ask you whether, after the outcome of the 1984 general elections, did you approach either of those two parties? Did you offer yourself at any point after the 1984 elections? Did you offer yourself for a senatorial position? We just asked the question. You see, it is in the same way as while when you talk of China versus Taiwan, we have asked several times, did you at any time in your political career seek to court China? Did you at any time in your political career seek to court China? You see, sometimes you have to ask these questions. They may never get answered, you know. They may never get answered. But one has to understand that perhaps we will never get answers. You see, all the rubbish about how he wants to die and what he does or does not want when he dies, all that poppycock may well be interpreted as little more than a childish mechanism to earn sympathy from an unsuspecting electorate. It had no business in the parliamentary debate on the budget. That's the difference between hubris and humility. You know only after he died that Sir Frederick Ballantyne requested a coffin made out of breadfruit wood. You only know that after he died. He never went around and paraded telling people, here, look at me, look how humble I am. I want a breadfruit coffin. You only knew it after he died. That's humility. It was something he told his closest friends and those who he thought would be responsible for his thing. He didn't go and sing it off the nation, even though he was head of state. But we have to be sitting down in a budget debate and hearing about what this one wants and what doesn't want when he dies. That's not what it's about.
I was just here.
But it's the brand of politics that he met. And while he speaks of offering a different dispensation, it's the same old khaki pants, it's the same old type of politics.
I think,
because you believe that works.
I'm supposed to get a ride by...
because you don't believe there's been any genuine social, education revolution. That could be the only reason you're still doing that. Because if you ever believe there was an education revolution, you'll recognize that young people therefore understand hubris.
Right now, lady, right now in Canada wants me to come
and they can distinguish hubris from humility.
I am not on my vacation as yet.
You see, Gonzalez's budget presentation, his presentation in the budget debate, since it is his son who did the budget presentation, was essentially at best an apparent elections gimmick, where the politician presents himself as so religious, as so humble,
Hold on, there's a phone ringing here. Hold on.
that the electorate is cast into a mode of almost feeling that they should re-elect him and his party purely out of sympathy. The dramatization in Parliament on Thursday last was at best an apparent, was akin to that which was paraded for almost 45 minutes in the debate on the estimates in January 2011. You remember that? Yeah? There's little difference in the way in which it was presented. Because listeners may recall that in the debate on the estimates, or prior to the start of the debate on the estimates in January 2011, the Prime Minister took nearly 45 minutes of Parliament's time with a pantomime presentation on an assassination plot to kill him. But you have to understand that pantomime against the backdrop that in 2009 November, he got a slap in the face with regard to the rejection in a referendum of his proposed new constitution. You have to consider that against the backdrop that in December 2010, he lost 4 seats to the opposition New Democratic Party. So he moved from 12-3 to 8-7. That was the backdrop. So in January 2011, we get this cockamamie story about a plot to assassinate him. And just another look says, look, you need to determine whether or not he has some sort of syndrome, some sort of martyrdom syndrome, so that you can appeal to the masses to see you as some sort of martyr for the cause. The problem is, what cause? What sort of cause are we talking about? The Prime Minister appeared to have had a story so dramatic that not a single person got arrested based on the evidence he provided to the nation's parliament. You ask yourself then, in retrospect, what was it all about? What was it all about? So, now, 11 years, 9 years after that, we have this dramatization in Parliament once more, where we parenthetically move into this and move into that. And we go into a whole lot of things about, you know, his career. What was the relevance to the budget? None. Absolutely none. But it was good politics if you're trying to win a next term in office. It's good politics because of who you were addressing, not the members of parliament. You were addressing the Vincentian electorate. Nice strategy. Nice strategy. It was not only, the presentation was not only melodramatic, you know. But if you were in fact exposed to any sort of genuine education revolution, you'd have found it tragicomical. You'd have found it tragicomical. You'd probably even have thought that the Prime Minister was making a bid for an Oscar. A dramatic presentation. But you know, then there was the classic case of tragic irony. When the Prime Minister spoke of the NDP's administration's approach to the UK for debt relief. What we want to highlight here is the drama around that part of his presentation and the seeming contradiction of its content. Because here was the Prime Minister trying to remind us of how many years of colonial rule we were under the British. Of all that the British would have done to us. And he was correct in saying, why would you want to be approaching these people for anything? If it is that you felt strongly enough about giving them back the flag, giving them back the anthem and what have you because you want to be independent, then let us be independent. That's it. Yeah? So you sit down and you're taking in and you begin to say, well, okay, this is the progressive Ralph Gonsalves talking about the British colonialism and this and that and the other. Yeah? He sought to recall the utter shame we should all have for what the British did to our ancestors. But while the Prime Minister seemed anxious to paint the NDP administration with an ugly brush of seeming lack of understanding of the blight that was colonialism, he seemingly ignored his own political plight. It is the same Britain. It is the same Queen, Elizabeth II. It is the same British government that was the place of choice for his advanced studies at university. He says with pride that he did his master's and so on in Manchester. There's a certain amount of pride of having been schooled. Part of his education was in the same heartland of the colonial master. He takes that pride. Much of what he presents as his scholarship is grounded in that. But also, dear friends, the same colonial master, the same United Kingdom was the place of choice for his advanced university studies. Seemingly, the bastion of centuries of colonial rule across the world was nonetheless most worthy of providing him with his advanced education. An education he wears both on his forehead and on his shirt collars, shirt sleeves. The same Britain. The Prime Minister's seemingly careful denunciation of the NDP and its approach to the colonialist United Kingdom seemed to have overlooked his own retention of the annual Queen's Honours for outstanding dissensions. He, during his reign as Prime Minister, had been doling out KCMGs, MBEs, OBEs, recommending people to receive them from Her Majesty. The same colonial people. So you are so upset with the entities turning towards a colonial master. Years of colonial rule. But you're not bothered about the fact that when you came to office, you met a comprehensive program built up by some of the same people you were thought you had as your friends. and who would have voted for you in 2001, had prepared a document on national honors. Everything was there. All that was needed was the money to be put to provide the insignias for national or Vincentian or independent awards. But for 20 years, almost 20 years, you have accepted and nominated people for Her Majesty's awards. So you don't see the obvious contradiction. Or you're hoping that nobody is listening enough to pick up the contradiction. Yes, you can be talking now of wanting reparation, but you want it in cash. Is that what we want, right? Cash. We could put any value. What value can you really put, dear friend, on the human lives that were lost as a result of slavery and colonialism? It's a problem all of the Caribbean has. What value, what dollar value do you put on human life? What dollar value do you put? So you see, the Prime Minister does not appear to be clear in his approach to the United Kingdom as a former colonial power. You can't be wanting to criticize one political regime for dealing with a power that colonized us for so much. Yet, in an age of your so-called education revolution, you are nonetheless continuing to purvey a system of honors that retains that stain of colonialism. You can't both be fish and fowl. You cannot at once be fish and fowl. So which are you? But you see, within the hallowed halls of Parliament, you can talk this political trite. And then you can call up Press Huggins, where no one comes sufficiently prepared to be able to ask a question that can be answered in a minute or two. We have to get long political diatribes. So you have a free fall. You can say anything you want anywhere because you have the gift of gab and you have the access. There's no real debate that takes place in Parliament. There's none. There are opportunities for people to spout their political ramblings. They have a forum for doing so. There is no real debate. And the crosstalk that comes across that the speaker can't seem to control anyhow doesn't help. One wonders if there's any decorum at all in the House of Assembly. But there's a feeling of self-righteousness of those who govern by virtue of having more members in the chamber. And so they applaud. The other members applaud when Papa makes his point and gleefully looks around and I laugh. You like it? Yeah? What has changed, dear friends? What has changed? You know, there is a certain level of inconsistency and contradiction in what the Prime Minister says and what he does. There seems a great deal of ambivalence in his stance. But this is not inconsistent with his politics. And if you want to understand his politics, there are a few people you could ask, you know. You could actually ask Renwick Rose. You could ask Pierre Campbell. You could ask Justice Adrian Saunders. These were people who were in his political circle. You could ask Mike Brown. You remember Mike Brown flip-flop and floppity-flop and move all over the place, you know. So they can tell you about the politics of Ralph Gonsalves. The question is, will they? You see, close analysis of the politics of some of our current self-proclaimed leaders, once progressive and clearly leftovers and ruminants of the left, reveals a significant case of political opportunism. Today, the Prime Minister of this country appears to be far more religious than the Pope in Rome. He seems to have forgotten the days when the ideological left was apparently perceived as the best thing since sliced bread. But he continues on his merry way. And oh, before we forget, the books. The books. He took the time during the budget debate to mention his books. How many books he has written? One can only assume it was intended to convey a sense of scholarship. Good thing the comrade had them to remind the nation that despite his best efforts and his scholarship, the Vincentian electorate does not appear to be buying him. Was he seeking to use the parliamentary forum as a last-ditch effort to market his books? His seeming admonition that people must write fell flat, since amongst the parliamentary members on his side of the house, only he and his son can boast of having written books, apart from, of course, the Minister of Education, who would be doing some writing in poetry. So was he admonishing his own members? We ought to remember that at a rally in Kailakua in 2015, at the ULP rally, the Prime Minister presented his candidates with copies of his books at the time. And he jokingly said to the members present at the rally, they have to read, you know, they have to read. One wonders whether he dared ask any of them 5 years later whether they had taken the time to read any of the books he had presented to them. He may just have been afraid of the responses he would have received from his own members in Parliament. But so be it. C'est la vie. Today, dear friends, the 8th day of February 2020 marks 4,782 days since the disappearance of SVG Air J8VAX. Dominic Gonsalves is the pilot, Rashid Ibrahim, the passenger. Today marks 3,472 days since the disappearance of J8SXY, piloted by Suresh Lakram. J8VX was coming from Kanoan, disappeared between Bequia and St. Vincent. Not a trace. Just between Bequia and St. Vincent. Suresh Lakram, piloting J8SXY, called out to conduct a mercy mission, heading to Kanoan, disappeared without a trace. We got a very lengthy report on J8VAX, albeit just another look has rejected it. But we're yet to see a report for J8SXY. But clearly, there are not enough people in the country interested in a report on the disappearance of J8SXY. Why should you be? It's just another plane that disappeared from the same company in just under 4 years. No love lost, I suppose. But that's how we are in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Some matters are important and some are not. And I suppose we just have to live with that. And it's the same way that they want Alban Bowman to live with the reality that on the 19th of September 2008, his wife was crushed by the wall of somebody's property. Now, how hard could that be in terms of administration of justice? But here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, going on 12 years later, justice really hasn't been served. And no one in the governmental structure, no one in the Bar Association, believes that justice needed to be served in this case. But to suggest that Bowman must take his own financial resources to go to court to get compensation for something that is so blatantly obvious flies in the face of rational thinking, flies in the face of critical thinking. But this is St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Enough said. You've been listening to another edition of Nice Radio's Callaloo presentation, Just Another Look. Just Another Look is an innovative, exciting, albeit decidedly provocative, and yes, they're certainly controversial, socio-political analysis of issues of a local, regional, and international nature. Just Another Look is heard only on Nice Radio, first aired on Saturdays at 6 p.m., which repeat broadcasts on Sundays at 9 p.m. You can catch us on the World Wide Web, www.niceradio.info. You can check out our Just Another Look blog, www.justanotherlook.com. Or you can visit us and listen to us on YouTube. I am, of course, Keith Joseph.